Good morning. Here is how you get your engine started when the solenoid is bad and your backup is not working either. Let's just go aft with this. So
check
first,
the oil?
we'll check the oil. I'm pretty confident we're gonna need to top it off.
Ooh, can't touch this.
Don't touch that filter, yeah. Oily. Try to drip on the rag, not on the ground.
Oh yeah, it's under the min. That's what it says.
By how much? Under the minimum by how much?
Millimeter.
A mil under the minimum. All right, so we'll put a little splash
They're
in.
actually the lower line. Which one?
That's the min. Put the towel under the dipstick, the wet part, so when it drips on the towel. That's the whole idea. All right, so when you're in a jam, and assuming it's a diesel engine, you don't have any gas fumes, gasoline, petrol fumes, you can use a screwdriver, but that makes a lot of sparks and it kind of melts and screws up the contacts on the solenoid, so that's not ideal. Next up, I guess, would be jumper cables.
Which ones?
But hold on, Beck, I'm gonna get a flashlight.
Okay.
But a better option is to make up a cable with a push button. Show us the push button. This very resourceful sailor friend of mine loaned this to us. I've had it for months. I need to return it and make my own. All right, Beck, so on the big solenoid, the big red can right there.
This
yep.
one?
Watch out, those two, where that red wire attaches, that's bolted on, that's one of the points. And that other little 90-degree tab. All right, and make sure there's no debris around the engine controls that could jam us up. And make sure we're at minimum and we're in neutral. Turn on the key, you'll hear the low oil pressure buzzer. Over to our button. And nothing. Because one of the clips. There we go. We actually clipped it. I had you clip it on one of the wrong contacts. My bad. Earlier this summer, I swapped out the solenoid on the main engine. It was bad. I had a used spare on board that came off of the windlass. I installed that one, it worked for a bit, but now that one has failed as well. So I bought two new solenoids. I may regret this, and I know better, but I bought a generic brand. I think these things were like $10 each, US. So super cheap, unknown origin. I'm sure they're, let's see. I like that they're the Ford red color and copper. That's kind of fancy. Copper plated, most likely. Yeah, these things ain't even... There isn't even an indication of the origin country of manufacture. Well, we'll see how this goes. Maybe I'll get a season out of it. Maybe it'll only work for a week. Oh my goodness. Well, I've been chasing what I think is a intermittent ground issue in the control panel. Originally, I thought I had a intermittently failing start solenoid, which may have been the case because we changed it out. But I ran into it again this afternoon. Once the engine's hot, turn it off, it won't restart. I'll show you here. Key on. No click, nothing. And it is not a transmission safety switch issue. I've checked that. You can see here, this is the starboard side of the transmission. This is the neutral safety switch. So this is the lead that runs from the ignition start button down to the solenoid relay. So if the transmission's in gear, this switch is open and then the solenoid will not engage. It turns out my start solenoids, all of them, were fine. The issue is corrosion on these contacts. So before I started swapping solenoids, I put a voltmeter on these two contacts and tested the continuity in neutral. And I had current. I've also tested voltage through here and I was getting 12 volts. But I guess what was happening was there was enough corrosion on there that I couldn't pass the required amps to activate the solenoid consistently. And that's why I had the intermittent problem. And for some reason it was less likely to start once the transmission and engine were warm. So I took these terminals and screws off, I cleaned them up with some fine grit sandpaper, and then I bathed everything in a dielectric grease and reassembled. And now all is well. Engine starts. Also, looking further here at the transmission, I would like to change out the damper plate that engages the engine to the transmission. Basically, it's the equivalent of a clutch in this system. I think it's supposed to be done every 2,500 hours. I'm at about 3,200 hours, and I don't know if it's ever been done. And I would prefer to do that now before it fails on me while I'm trying to dock. Now that swap out is relatively easy, so I'm told you just remove all these bell housing bolts and slide the transmission away from the engine to get in there. But the problem is, in my case, the rear engine mounts are on the transmission, not the engine. So I need to learn how to prop up the engine to remove the transmission, which will include disconnecting the drive shaft, and then ultimately reassembling everything and aligning the shaft. So I'm going to research this a bit, and first step will be calling American Diesel to get some advice and see if this is a project I want to tackle on my own or just pay a mechanic to do it. And as you can see, I need to change out my oil absorbent rags. There's all the spilled diesel from the failed lift pump and swap outs I did in some previous videos. So here's the fuel lift pump. On further examination, I may still have a fuel leak at this connection. It looks like it's the black supply hose connector where it mates to this threaded adapter. Because if I look at the upper threads, those look dry. It looks like it's just the lower end. Alright, well, I'm going to put a wrench on that and try to tighten it a little bit more. Alright, look at this. I also have an alternator issue, as in I don't think it's charging. My voltage climbs to 13.5 when the engine's running, so it's producing voltage, but I don't think it's actually ramping up and outputting current. Because I just cruised around the harbor for 90 minutes with no load other than chart plotter. And now it's charging and it's taking 17 amps in. Actually, the more I think about that, I don't know, like even if the alternator wasn't operational, I don't have many devices that pull current. The engine doesn't need any power when it's running. It's a mechanical fuel pump. All my controls are manual. I don't know. Another thing to I gotta get diligent about researching here is I gotta test the entire charge alternator circuit.